Man may have evolved in a decisive way by becoming fully human in prehistoric times, thanks to the handling of tools or weapons.
In 2001, A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick's 1968 film and Arthur C. Clarke's novel published the same year, The Dawn of Man sequence depicts the emergence of intelligence among the proto-humans, Australopithecines or man-apes, through a process directly linked to aggression and the discovery of the first tool used as a weapon. This scene, partly inspired by Clarke's short story Encounter in the Dawn, forms the thematic foundation of the work. Human evolution is not portrayed as a peaceful or contemplative progression, but as the result of a violent rupture triggered by an extraterrestrial catalyst, the monolith. I will explain some elements of the scene. Here are my comments. The learning depicted in this scene is behaviorist in nature. Furthermore, the evolution from a primitive species to one with better guaranteed survival involved a shift in diet, from primarily plant-based to omnivorous thanks to meat. The use of weapons enabled this shift in the meals for the hominids. I will develop all these points now, beginning with the description of the scene. 1. Description of the scene in the film and the novel. At the beginning, the proto-humans live in an arid African savanna, approximately 3 million years ago. They are weak, hungry, and in constant competition. They feed mainly on roots, berries, and occasional scavenged carcasses. They suffer predation from a leopard and are driven away from a waterhole by a stronger rival tribe. Their survival is precarious, almost entirely vegetarian and scavenger-based. A black monolith suddenly appears. The man-apes approach it with fear and curiosity. They touch it. In the film, this remains visual and ambiguous. Kubrick leaves the interpretation of the monolith's role to the viewer. In Clarke's novel, the monolith is explicitly an extraterrestrial teaching device that stimulates the hominid's brain development by implanting the capacity for innovation. Immediately afterward, Moonwatcher, the leader of the tribe, named in the novel, discovers a pile of bones. He picks up a long femur, experiments with it. He taps, strikes, and shatters other bones, notably a tapir skull in the film. The sequence grows increasingly intense, accompanied by Richard Strauss's Also sprach Zarathustra, symbolizing elevation and probably also selection. He realizes the destructive potential of the object. The bone becomes a club, the first tool, but above all the first weapon. He first uses it against a rival from the enemy tribe who comes to drink at the waterhole. He kills him, allowing his group to dominate the vital resource, water. Then the man-apes or hominids actively hunt. They kill prey, animals such as a tapir or wild boar, and consume their meat. Moonwatcher, one of the hominids, can be imagined as carrying the bone tool and a large piece of fresh meat. The entire group eats flesh now. It's an obvious consequence. They even could kill the leopard that had been threatening them. The sequence culminates in the triumphant throwing of the bone into the air, which, through the famous match cut, becomes a nuclear satellite orbiting the Earth, linking the primitive weapon to future space technology and to humanity's ongoing violence. 2. Analysis. Let's focus on the emergence of intelligence through aggression and the first tool as a weapon. The film and the book put forward a clear thesis. Intelligence arises from aggression channeled through the tool weapon. It is not a philosophical or peaceful revelation, such as a tool for digging or gathering, but a violent discovery. Aggression, domination, murder of the rival, predatory hunting, provides the motivational context. Without the urgent need to kill in order to survive or dominate, the bone would remain mere debris. The monolith acts as an extraterrestrial trigger, and external stimulus, but the true emergence of intelligence manifests in the behavioral act. Moonwatcher moves from passivity to technical mastery through aggressive use. The tool is from the very beginning a weapon, a club to smash skulls, symbolizing that human technology is inseparable from violence. The novel and the movie emphasize that this Darwinian aggression, survival of the strongest armed individual, is the driving force of cognitive evolution. This cognitive evolution appears clearly with planning, causality comprehension, if I strike, I kill, and group coordination. The novel is more explicit about the intellectual awakening. Moonwatcher's eyes show the first glimmers of intelligence. In the film, it is purely visual and emotional. The progression goes from passive curiosity to exalted rage, illustrating that intelligence is a conquering power, not contemplative wisdom. The bone-to-satellite cut reinforces the theme. The entire human story, from club to nuclear weapon, stems from this aggressive moment. 3. The learning process is behaviorist in nature. Behaviorism is the psychological theory of Pavlov, Watson, and especially Skinner, learning through conditioning, stimulus response, and reinforcement without relying on complex internal cognitive processes. Moonwatcher does not suddenly understand through pure insight, as in experiments with chimpanzees. He manipulates the bone exploratorily stimulus, the object within reach. Then he tests the movements. Finally, he observes the immediate consequences, noise, breaking, sensation of power. The success of smashing a skull produces positive reinforcement, euphoria, victory, food. The behavior is thus shaped and repeated. It progresses from clumsy gestures to deliberate and effective use. There is no verbalization or visible abstract reflection. Everything is observable behavior reinforced by the environment, hunger, rivalry, success. The monolith provides the initial facilitating stimulus, enhancing learning capacity. However, the acquisition of the skill is purely behavioral. In the film, the sequence shows a gradual emotional progression, from curiosity to triumphant rage. It's typical of conditioning where reward strengthens the behavior. The monolith teaches, but it's a progressive discovery through physical manipulation. This contrasts with cognitivist learning with sudden understanding and mental modeling. This contrasts also with innatist views. Here, intelligence emerges as a learned behavior through interaction with the environment and reinforcement of consequences. That's exactly behaviorism. 4. The evolution does involve the shift from a vegetarian to an omnivorous diet thanks to weapons. The work explicitly portrays this as a decisive step toward better guaranteed survival. Before the weapon emergence, hominids had essentially vegetarian and scavenger diet, roots, grasses. They suffered from chronic famine, physical weakness, vulnerability to predators, lost competition for resources. After the weapon emergence, the bone tools enable active hunting. The manapes kill prey and consume meat, rich in proteins and dense calories. This ends the famine. They become dominant predators. They could kill the leopard. They can secure the territory. Meat may have provided the energy necessary for brain and muscle development, enabling evolution toward more robust and intelligent hominids. It could have offered a better guarantee of survival. The group shifts from potential prey to dominant beings. The otters thus illustrate a fictionalized version of the paleoanthropological hypothesis. Meat, via hunting tools, would have favored the development of the human brain. The monolith accelerates this transition, but the vector is clearly the weapon that transforms the diet. Conclusion. The film and the book present a materialist and Darwinian vision, tinged with science fiction. Human intelligence is born from aggression via the tool weapon. It is acquired through purely behaviorist learning, trial and reward, and is accompanied by a dietary shift from vegetarian to omnivorous that seals adaptive superiority. The Dawn of Man sequence is not merely a prologue, it establishes that the entire human odyssey, up to HAL 9000, the AI dangerous computer, and beyond, stems from this founding moment of creative violence. It is both a celebration of evolution and a warning about its aggressive roots. If Moonwatchers becomes the first man, Bowman may be the last one and the first to evolve towards something else. If the bone was the first weapon, HAL 9000 may be the last one, the destructive one.
The ending of the film is intentionally cryptic and visual. After traveling through the Stargate, astronaut Dave Bowman finds himself in a Lewis 16-style suite, existing outside of linear time and space. The life cycle. He watches himself age rapidly in a matter of moments, representing the finitude of the current human species. Transcendence. On his deathbed, he faces the monolith. It acts as an evolutionary catalyst sent by an invisible extraterrestrial intelligence. The Star Child. Bowman is reborn as an astral fetus, the Star Child. This represents the next stage of human evolution. Humanity has moved beyond its tools, like HAL 9000, to become a pure cosmic entity. Skinner's behaviorism. B.F. Skinner's radical behaviorism is a psychological theory stating that human behavior is not caused by internal will or thoughts, but is entirely shaped by the environment. The key concept, operant conditioning. According to Skinner, we learn through the consequences of our actions. This mechanism relies on two pillars. Reinforcement. If an action is followed by a reward, positive reinforcement, or the removal of an unpleasant stimulus, negative reinforcement, the probability of the individual repeating that action increases. Punishment. If an action leads to an unpleasant consequence, the individual will tend to stop performing that behavior. Skinner used the Skinner box to prove that behavior can be shaped in animals, and by extension, humans, by manipulating rewards. For him, free will is largely an illusion. We are the product of the reinforcements we have encountered throughout our lives.
At the beginning of the book and movie, the hominids Australopithecines are depicted as weak vegetarians or herbivores. They struggle to feed on grasses, roots, and berries in a hostile environment, prehistoric Africa. They compete with other animals for food, live in constant fear a leopard attacks them, and flee from a rival tribe at the waterhole. They are on the brink of extinction or marginal survival. The appearance of the monolith, an alien artifact, acts as a catalyst for intelligence. It stimulates one of them, Moonwatcher in the book, to discover the tool, an animal bone, a taper femur, used as a weapon. Thanks to this tool weapon, the hominids become carnivores or omnivores. They kill animals, tapers, for raw meat, providing a much higher protein and caloric intake than their previous vegetarian diet. This allows them to survive better. It ends famine, improves nutrition, and gives them more energy. They dominate their environment. They hunt, kill a leopard, and especially defeat the rival tribe at the waterhole through armed violence. The shift to a more carnivorous or omnivorous diet, made possible by the use of tools as weapons, is the decisive trigger for human evolution. This marks the true beginning of humanity. Intelligence, domination of nature, organized violence, and by extension, the entire technological journey. The bone thrown into the air famously cuts to a spaceship. The monolith boosts this evolution, but the mechanism is clear. Tool, weapon, meat, survival, and progress. The book is slightly more explicit than the film on this point. The hominids are starving. The monolith gives them the spark to invent tools, and meat ends their decline. A few weaknesses or contradictions can be sustained without too many difficulties. Scientific anachronism. In 1968, the killer ape hypothesis and the idea that hunting and meat-eating were the main drivers of human evolution were popular. However, later paleoanthropological discoveries have significantly nuanced this. Hominids were already more omnivorous than purely herbivorous, and tool use appears to have been more gradual or earlier than the sudden Big Bang shown in the film. The film presents the tool primarily as a weapon for war and hunting rather than as a tool for gathering or crafting. Violence is highlighted as the origin of intelligence, reflecting a slight cynical vision but ignoring other factors, bipedalism, fire, cooperation, etc. Let's focus on the monolith now. It makes evolution seem miraculous rather than natural, which somewhat contradicts a purely Darwinian view. The film plays on the ambiguity. For the movie and the book, the tool and weapon with the meat can transform the weak, vegetarian hominid into a dominant predator, launching the human odyssey toward the stars. It's a powerful, symbolic, and somewhat dark vision, intelligence born from violence, but scientifically open to the possibility of several critiques and alternatives, as well as more complex options and theories.